Hi, this is Franklin Allaire, State Director for the Hawaii State Science Olympiad, and welcome to Part 2 of our Coaching 101 series. We're going to pick up where we left off in Part 1 and talk more about what coaches need to know or should know in order to put together a Science Olympiad team at their school. So let's go ahead and jump right in and get started because we've got a lot to cover. So you've got your team together, you've gotten your kids excited, and now comes the fun part, and that's training for the events. So what are some of the best resources and materials? Well, I think that one of the #1 resources that you should always go to, of course, is the rules manual. When you register your team, you get a rules manual, Division B, Division C, for middle school and high school respectively. So those are always the go-to places for preparing for your events. The internet is also, as we've talked about, a really great resource. You've got our website, hsso.org. You've got the national website, scioli.org. You've got YouTube. You've got all kinds of wonderful things out there for students to check out. One thing that I think you should think about, especially in terms of sustaining your team, is a binder system. So as students find materials for particular events, have them put all of these things into a binder and label that binder with that particular event. At the end of the tournament season, that binder goes up onto a shelf, and next year when your students start preparing again, they simply pull that binder down and they already have half the work done for them. Now some events do get rotated out, but a lot of times they come back, and they may also come back in other forms. So this will give you and your entire team a central place to go to for certain types of information, whether it's for disease detectives or chemistry, rocks and minerals, or fossils. When you're looking at the rules manual, one of the things to pay attention to is what kind of reference materials you can bring into the events. Are you allowed to bring a binder? Are you allowed a single sheet of paper? Are you allowed a calculator? Are you allowed to bring a computer? Are you allowed to bring a field guide? Make sure you read things carefully so that you and your students come into the events prepared. You also want to make sure to check the national website, soinc.org, for any rule changes and rule clarifications. So that way both you and your students can be kept up to date on the latest and greatest information about all of the events. So now let's talk about practices. How often do you have them? Well, this goes back to the win, place, show philosophy we talked about at the end of Part 1. But realize that not all events are created equal. Some events, such as the building events, are going to take a little bit more time to prepare than other events, say rocks and minerals and fossils. All right, so that's something to consider. Now, for study events, I do encourage you to have your students study as a group. They can, of course, do this face-to-face. They can do this in a lab. They could do it through email. They can also do it online through Moodle, Facebook, or even Google Docs. For building events, you're going to have to get hands-on. You can think about working with individual pairs of students. You can also think about a larger construction night where all of the events are building. In fact, you can even make kind of a party out of it. You can have the kids that are in study events come out, and all of the building things get tested, and everybody has fun, and everybody gets to see stuff going on, and everybody gets to comment and provide some feedback on it. But you want to think about construction locations and, of course, liability, and last but not least, the availability of your coaches and your students. So these are all some things to consider with your practices. Now, when it comes time for the actual tournament, you want to take a look at the tournament schedule. And in one of our basic training videos, we talked about a sample tournament schedule. So get a hold of those schedules as soon as possible. And think again about your win, place, show philosophy. What is it that you want your students to get out of by participating in Science Olympiad? Most of all, at a tournament, you want to make sure to help your students. You want to make sure to give them an individual schedule, help them locating their events, and you may even want to pair them up with some parents so that you're not the only one running around the whole day trying to get students to where they need to be. One thing that I've seen a lot of coaches do lately, and that seems to be pretty effective, is creating either event bags or event containers. And this is a bag that has everything the students need for a particular event, and they just pick it up and they go. So for instance, if they are on their way to chemistry lab, they pick up the event bag for chemistry lab, and in that bag there are long sleeve shirts. There are closed-toed shoes. There are lab aprons or lab coats. There are goggles. There are pens and pencils. Maybe a calculator if that's going to be allowed in the event. So it has everything that they need to know for that particular event, and they're good to go. So that, I think, is something to seriously think about doing. It seems to work very, very well for some of the teams I've seen at both regional, state, and national tournaments. So event bags, definitely a way to go. Parental involvement. I think parents should definitely be involved at all levels of your Science Olympiad team. You can have them as coaches, you can have them with organizing. When it comes time for a tournament, you are definitely going to need parents to help with transportation. Even if your tournament is on island, you're going to need drivers. If you have to fly to a neighbor island, if you are qualified to participate in the national tournament, you're obviously going to need chaperones for a trip like that. So get to know your parents very quickly. When it comes time for the tournament, at the tournament itself, parents are really good gophers. You can send them for things, you can send them to help students get to where they need to go, they can pick up lunches, they can do all kinds of different things so that you are not the only one running around like a chicken with your head cut off. Now, finances. Science Olympiad does take some money, but it's not nearly as expensive as other things. There are some expenses that you may choose to take on, like coaches training. Generally in Hawaii, we try to offer professional development for free, but there's tons of other workshops all over the country that you can attend, but that of course takes money, not only to register for those conferences, but also to travel to those conferences. There is of course a registration fee. Your team pays $100 for the first team, $80 for the second team to participate in Science Olympiad, and there's a whole variety of training materials and supplies that your team could invest in. I do want to tell you that you should look for investing in things that you're going to be able to reuse over and over and over again, but some things like building events, you're going to be investing in things that are going to be consumed during the year. So make friends with folks at Ben Franklin, City Mill, Ace Hardware, any hardware store around you so that you can get maybe some deals, maybe some bulk rate or contractors rates on some things like that. Obviously, again, if your team is going to need to travel, there are some travel fees associated with that, whether it's gas money or airplane fees, shipping fees, and things like that. And last but not least, as far as expenses go, something you may want to take on is having a special Science Olympiad t-shirt. Some schools are perfectly fine just wearing a school t-shirt. In fact, I've seen quite a few times where students will show up wearing a uniform shirt for a particular team that they are on for their school. And I think that's fine. Other schools go out and they get Science Olympiad t-shirts, and that's fine too. So whatever your team decides to do, just realize that that is an expense that you and your students will have to take into account. But there's three major ways that I want to talk about raising money. First of all, you could charge a participation fee. Anything over $25 I think is going to be unfair to the kids participating, and it may dissuade some students from participating, especially if your school is in an area that is economically challenged. A second way, of course, is fundraising. Zippy's chili tickets, Huli Huli chicken, whatever it is that you think that you and your students can sell to raise money for your team, do it. Lastly, of course, corporate contributions. This is probably one that is the most time-consuming for teachers because it involves a lot of outreach and maybe a lot of convincing. So as far as corporate contributions go, start with your parents. Talk to the kids. What do their parents do? If mom's a doctor, if dad's a lawyer, if they work for a tech company, if they work for Dow AgroSciences, Syngenta, BASF, or maybe a smaller local company, see if their company is willing to pitch in $50, $100 to help support your team. A lot of times, if the parents are the ones going to the company might be more likely to help support it. Even more importantly is to talk to your parents and find out if their companies match employee donations. So that way, if mom and dad donate $50, Their company also donates $50, and then you have $100. And who doesn't want $100 to spend on Science Olympiad stuff? I don't know. I'd like $100 to spend on Science Olympiad stuff, and I'm sure you do too. Now, trying to wrap things up as quickly as possible in this presentation, let's talk about putting it all together. You're going to need a basic knowledge of the events, so make sure that you read and reread the events in the rules manuals. Map out your year. That includes before practices start and, of course, after the tournaments. Have a pizza party. Have a barbecue. Get everybody back together. Keep that momentum going. The kids are going to be excited. You want to keep the parents and the teachers excited too. As soon as you get started, you want to make sure to find as many resources as possible and use them. Remember, cheap is good, but free is great. All right? I don't think teachers need to be lectured on that one. Also realize that by the end of the tournament season, the kids are definitely going to know more about the events than you do, and that's okay. Because you don't want to be a micromanager, because micromanagers are going to burn out. And the last thing to keep in mind is that Science Olympiad is a way of life. It has a habit of sucking you in, and once it does that, it doesn't want to let you go, and your kids are going to help keep it that way. Your kids are going to get really, really excited, especially if you have freshmen and they're going to return next year as sophomores, so suddenly they're not at the lower end of the totem pole. And they're going to come to you that first day, and they're going to want to know when the practices are. When are the teams going to be put together? So there's going to be this level of enthusiasm that maybe you haven't seen before, but it's a great level of enthusiasm, and it's really inspiring. One final thought here is that Science Olympiad, deep down, yes, it is a tournament, but it's about having fun doing good science. And it's true for Science Olympiad as it is for anything. If you have fun doing something, you're going to work hard. And when you work hard, you're going to get good. And when you get good, you're going to have even more fun than you did before. So instead of having a vicious cycle, you have what I like to call a cycle of awesomeness, where the kids are going to have fun doing their events, they're going to have fun working together, and by doing that, they're going to work harder to help each other, to help you, to help the team. And by working harder, they're going to get good at their events. And when they get good at their events, they're going to have even more fun doing their events. So again, it's a cycle of awesomeness. At the end of all of our presentations, well, first of all, I want to thank you for watching, and I do want to encourage you to get connected, and there's a variety of ways you can do that. Of course, you can go to our website, hsso.org. You can go to the national website, soinc.org. You can go to the Science Olympiad Student Center at sciolly.org. You can always email us at hisciolympiad@gmail.com. And last but not least, you can always go to Facebook at facebook.com/hisciolympiad and like our page so that you can work with and talk to various teachers, directors, and students who are also on our Facebook page. It's a great way to kind of talk informally about some different things because you're not the only one out there. So until next time, thank you very much for tuning in, and aloha.